Thank you, Mr. Sriram. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the next session for the day. The topic at hand is perspectives from around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker has had a long, successful career in magazine publishing, including leading the publishing division of BBC magazines. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. James Hewes, the President, FIPP.
Thank you. I'm going to use this hand mic because I prefer to wander around on the stage. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming today. It's great to see you all here. It's great to be back in India after such a long time, to see so many of my friends, and of course to see so many of our FIPP members here as well. Thank you, all of you who are members of FIPP, for continuing to support the organization. And thank you also for supporting AIM. It's really important that we support our local associations around the world. And let's just give another clap to the AIM team for this fantastic event that they've organized today. And it's great also to be following Jayant, because he's obviously one of the co-authors of our book, Innovation in Media, World Report, which you'll be able to get a copy of at the Congress later this year. But what I'm going to do today, if I could have my slides up, please, is I'm going to talk you through some of the trends that we see in the global marketplace. Do I need to click that? Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Let's go back one. There we are. Right. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we see in the industry. First of all, a quick word about FIPP and who we are. For those of you who don't know, we are the global trade association for the magazine media industry, and we do three big things. We'll help you to learn through sharing knowledge, through sessions like this. We train people, we train your teams in the skills that they're going to need to develop the business. We help you to network, to meet people who might make a difference to your business, and we advocate on behalf of the industry in important sectors. And how we think about our audiences, how we think about the platforms that people work on. We are not anymore a print organization, we are a multi-platform organization. We think about these 5 core audience groups, and we try to represent their needs across all of those different platforms that we're all working on now. And the identity crisis that we have, if you like, in our industry, where we don't really know what we want to be called, is resolved by thinking about it in these terms. We run our own version of this AIM Congress every year in Portugal in June. The next one takes place this June in the same place. Great opportunity for you to come and network with publishers from around the world, and a lot of the learnings that you're going to be hearing today are taken from that event, and I do hope you can join us there. But what I want to start by talking about is change, and the way that change is affecting our industry. And we, as humans, tend to think that we are the most important generation that ever lived, and that the entirety of civilization exists around our time frame. And of course that's not true, because change is a constant. Here you can see all the different elements of technology that have come along in the last 100 years. The 20th century was the century of change, starting with grid electricity and ending with the smartphone and with social media at the right-hand side. Each one of those changes comes onto the market, and it follows the same pattern. It follows this S pattern of development. At the beginning, very few people have it, then suddenly it goes to mass adoption, and then everybody has it. And that's happened for technology after technology over the course of hundreds of years, certainly the last 150 years. Our job as publishers is to look at the right-hand scale of this graph, the right-hand side of this graph, and try to work out what is coming next. What is the next technology that is going to disrupt our world, so that we can adapt our businesses for those technologies in the same way that we've adapted them to meet the challenge of the smartphone and of social media. Some of you might be thinking that AI is that technology. I'm going to tell you why it's not. The other thing is that that rate of change is accelerating in terms of the democratization of distribution and production, meaning that the race to scale is quicker than it's ever been. This is the number of years it took for products to get to 50 million users, for the first commercial airline passenger to the 50 millionth, 68 years, for the same for Pokemon Go, 19 days. So a new product can come onto the market and cause disruption very, very quickly. So we have to be aware of that and react to it when it happens. Now, if we're very honest as magazine publishers, those of us who've worked in magazine media for a long time, we can be honest with ourselves because we're all friends. Our job used to be really easy. Really easy. see if I can kill this one, that's better. Okay, good. Our job used to be really, really easy. This is Time magazine from the year 2000. This was probably the high point of the industry as it once was. We used to produce magazines with great content, but we didn't really worry too much about how we monetized them because we had ad people who did that. They sold a bunch of ads, they sat in a different part of the building. We didn't really like them very much, sorry Jim, but they were, you know, basically they were funding the business, and it worked, right? We won loads of awards, we produced great journalism, people bought our magazines and our newspapers, and we made loads of money. This is Meredith, the US publisher. In the year 2000, they made $1 billion in revenue, and they made $236 million in profit on that revenue, 24% margin. Astonishing. So this was a really great way for us to make money and a really great way to engage our consumers. And the problem, of course, is that that all changed very, very quickly, and George W. Bush got sad. The first thing that happened was the shock of digital media and the impact it had on advertising. This is advertising revenue in the US for newspapers adjusted for inflation. All of the gains that we made since 1945, since the end of the war, were wiped out in 20 years. Gone, like that, vanished. Advertising was a blip, a 20th century blip in our industry. We rode a wave right the way to the top, and the wave crashed. And here, this, if you take one slide away from today, this is the one to take a picture of. For years, we told ourselves at conferences like this, well, it's okay, and we sort of rocked a little bit like this. It's okay because the digital advertising will replace it eventually. That's nonsense. This slide conclusively proves that once and for all. This is print advertising. This is the UK, but it could be anywhere. This is print advertising over the next 10 years, and this is digital advertising. Message number one, digital has overtaken print. We all kind of know that. Message number two, even if you extend this graph off here to the airport, doesn't matter how far you go, that pink line is never going to cross that blue line. It's never going to get back to what it was in 2000. So digital advertising is never going to save your business, ever. It's a myth. It will be an important component of your business, but it won't be the business in the way that print advertising was. Circulation, the picture's a little bit better. There is still a lot of decline in print circulation, but there are signs that in some markets, in some categories, that's flattening out and even increasing. And I think we can see a future where, for physical products, we can still have a market, and I'm going to show you what that market might look like. What's this all leading up to? It's leading up to thoughts about the way our market has changed in that last 25 years, that 25-year period. I will share all these slides with you afterwards, by the way. The easy part of our job was that in the old days, all we had to do was, it was difficult, but we had to write words, take pictures in print, and monetize them indirectly with an audience we didn't really know through advertising. Now that democratization of the means of production and distribution means that we can produce any of these things. Anybody in this room right now can make video, audio, can gather some data on the people who are here, can create an experience, an experiential product. And they can offer that across a whole bunch of platforms that before were closed off. We can be in TV, we can do in person, we can be on mobile and on social. But the big change that's happened is not that. The big change is that that model is being replaced by that model. Indirect relationship with the audience is being replaced by a D2C, direct-to-consumer model, where we have to know and understand our audience and monetize them directly, just as AIM are doing with their distribution reforms at the moment. Plays exactly into this model. So, what's the overriding message? The overriding message is you must have multiple revenue streams. You cannot rely on one revenue stream in the way that we used to do. You have to become a diversified media business. And the good news is, there's an industry we can look to for inspiration. The music industry has done this. They've managed it already. The red bar is physical media. The blue bars are streaming. What's the philosophical change that the music industry went through? They managed to get their heads around the idea that consumers don't need to own music, they can just rent it. Spotify is this. Spotify is just renting. You're renting the track for as long as it takes to play it, and then you don't own it anymore. And here's a ray of light for us as well. Look at the red bar physical media and look at 2021. It went up. It went up again in 2022. Does anybody know what that is? Vinyl. Vinyl records. Put your hand up if you bought a vinyl record in the last year. I did. You did. If you buy a vinyl record, they are expensive. They're 25 bucks to buy a vinyl record. This is a piece of plastic and a piece of cardboard that costs $1 to make. And they're charging, for an album that's been in print for 30 years, they're charging $25. The music industry has found a way to make their physical product a luxury product. That's the future for us as well. How do we transition our physical products into luxury products? Metallica, the band Metallica, just bought their own plant to make records because they sold 900,000 vinyl albums last year. I mean, it's astonishing. So what's the value chain for our industry? What are we looking at in terms of the key drivers, the key levers that publishers are pulling around the world to make their businesses work? I would suggest to you that there are 4 things that enable success. Having the right people and culture, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Building a workplace that's diverse and inclusive, representing the societies in which we operate. Operating sustainably, which consumers increasingly want. Having the right technology stack, which, by the way, I take issue slightly with some of the people who are presenting and talking about building their own tech stacks. Sorry, that's the wrong answer. The correct answer is SaaS. SaaS is enabling this really, really quickly and helping us to build technology without having to make the investment. We use all of that to make content, data, and information. And we have the new gold, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, first-party data, that sits behind our business and enables that direct interaction with the consumer. And we do that across 3 business models: print, digital, and other. What should our focus be? We know how to do this. We've done that for 100 years. We all know how to do that. This is quite interesting, and there's some cool stuff happening with education and consulting, but the majority of our focus is in this middle tier. And actually, the majority of our focus is on these 2 boxes: paid content or paid data, and e-commerce and lead generation. If you're a newspaper company, a news media company, it's this. If you're a magazine media company, it's that. That's the game. But this is the slide I put up when I have a room full of publishers because it makes us all feel better. You will see lots of people, lots of publishers come on stage and talk about a digital transformation and how great they are and blah, 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 blah. Fantastic. In aggregate in the industry, it's a lie. This is taken from Wanifra's report, so it applies to news media, but nevertheless it's relevant for magazine media as well. We know because we go behind the scenes of a lot of these companies. In print, in news media, circulation revenue in print is 9 times bigger than digital. Advertising revenue is 3 times bigger, and the audience is 10 times bigger in print than it is in digital. Most companies are still print companies. They still make the majority of their revenue and the majority of their profit from print. That's not to say that print's wonderful and we should all go back to the old days. It's just to give you reassurance that this is not wrong. And in fact, you have to have this because you can't do this without that. You can't fund your digital investment without a healthy, profitable print business. And I'm going to show you an example of what happens when you don't have a print business to back you up. So the perfect storm that's happening for us at the moment in the industry, just very quickly, firstly, paper. With our legacy business, with our print business, we can't escape the impact of paper. 85% increase in paper prices since the bottom point during COVID, a 20% increase on the pre-COVID price, which is translating to a 50 to 150% price at the gate for the publisher. Massive, massive change. At the same time, Stora Enso, who was once one of the biggest suppliers of paper in the European market, has completely exited magazine paper and newspaper. I think newspaper, definitely magazine paper, because it's more profitable for them to make pizza boxes than it is to make magazine paper. We are going to end up with 1 supplier in paper. This is a very worrying trend and something we need to do something about. I don't know what the answer is, but we should be aware that this is an existential crisis. It's no good having new business models for print if there's no paper to print the damn things on. Related to this, if the 20th century was the century of innovation and change, the 21st century is the century of crisis. Put your hand up if you're 30 or under in this room. There's a few, yeah, okay, a few people. So all you guys have ever known is crisis, right? 9/11, the GFC, COVID, the Ukraine war, the flu, swine flu, whatever the hell that thing was called, blah, 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 everything. There's always a new crisis. What's that causing? It's causing a dramatic increase in energy prices. This current crisis, the war in Ukraine, dramatic increase in currency, in energy prices. The consequence for us as an industry is that the inflationary pressure that all this is creating is causing job losses. We've lost 11,000 jobs in the media industry in the US in 1 quarter in 2023 already. That's excluding Google and Meta and all those guys. That's just us. And that's all being driven by one thing. This. And I'm not a great believer in the great man theory of history, but this is all being caused by one guy. We all know who he is, little fella, runs a country not far from here, up north. If he disappears, a lot of this problem goes away. I don't know what we can do about that collectively, I'm just saying. But this is a very unusual situation, because we're at the mercy of something that is completely outside of our control. If that invasion, that war finishes, I think a lot of this inflationary pressure goes away and we can get back to business as usual. And finally, I said I was going to talk about AI and the current status around AI and worries about AI. There are people who think that AI is going to destroy our business, change our world, whatever. It will change some aspects of our world. If you work in the marketing world, I think it will. I asked AI to write me a review of the movie Goodfellas, which it did. It's not a very good review, but it wrote a review. It knew what it was and it could answer the question. And I think the problem here is shiny object syndrome. We, especially those of us who are a bit older, are looking at this and going, my God, this is amazing. It's like a human. It's not a human, it's just a very clever bit of software. It doesn't create anything. It doesn't have inspiration. All it has is the ability to summarize really, really well. And contrast it with a journalist, a writer. Hunter Thompson writing about Nixon. I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but look at some of the wording he puts in there. Nixon had the integrity of a hyena and the style of a poisoned toad. All this kind of great evocative writing. AI can't do that. AI can never do that. It can write something that looks like that because it's read his content and gone, I can write it in the same style, but it doesn't have the leap of the imagination. So for quality journalism, I think this fear is completely overplayed. What we should be worried about with AI is 3 things. Firstly, the ability of bad actors, we were talking about disinformation earlier, to create content at scale that is just there to spam the search results. Google has a big role to play in this. If SEO doesn't work anymore because there are people creating content using ChatGPT just with the aim of taking traffic away from us so that they can sell crappy ads around it, that's a problem. And you've got to believe that Google doesn't want that either. Then there are 2 copyright issues around this. The first copyright issue is, where does this program, this software, learn to do all the stuff that it's doing? From us, from our content. The only reason it knows what Goodfellas is and can write it in the style of a magazine is because it's gone out onto the web and learned what a magazine is. Did we get paid for that? No. Should we get paid for it? Of course we should get paid for it. These guys are free riding off our collective effort, and that's not right. The third thing, the other copyright issue, at the moment the legal status seems to be that nobody owns the copyright in this content once it's created. You don't own it just because you asked the question, and they don't own it just because they created the software. So if you're going to fill your news site or your magazine site with AI-generated content, just be aware that any kid out there with a website can copy and paste it, and there isn't a damn thing you can do about it, because it doesn't belong to you. It's not your content. So I think AI is not quite the thing that we thought it was going to be. Just a quick word on some of the things in that business model. Talent and culture, leadership. We have a bit of a crisis of leadership in our industry at the moment. This lady, Professor Lucy Kung, who spoke at Congress, that fantastic academic, very, very clever person, has written this really good report, which is free to download from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, which I recommend that you download, called Hearts and Minds, where she talks about the leadership characteristics that you're going to need to face up to this digital transformation challenge, this change challenge. Be high-thinking, low ego. This is a big change in our industry. Let's face it. There's lots of people in this industry with lots of ego. There always has been. We need to change that. We need to think more and have less ego. We need to push power down. We need to be a coach, not a boss. We need to work out how we can get our Gen Y and Gen Z colleagues to work with us. We need to have new talent and new roles. So really important that we get the right talent in there. I spoke about the new gold of our industry being data. You must have a first-party data strategy. You must be collecting data on all of the audiences that interact with you and have a way of using it and analyzing it. You can, if you're a FIPP member, nudge, nudge, download this report from us for free, which tells you how to do that. Here's some of the things that you might need. Capturing data, analyzing it, using traditional, integrating your traditional activities into that. Why? Because that first-party data is driving that D2C business that we spoke about earlier, moving away from a world where you don't really care what the audience is, as long as you can aggregate it and sell ads against it, to one where you absolutely have to know who your most critical customers are and sell to them directly. I spoke about the music industry's luxury solution to the physical media problem. I think the same is true for print. There are a whole bunch of publications that are starting to do this already, but print definitely does have a luxury future. And again, this requires us to do quite a few radical things that are counterintuitive, but when they've been done, they work. Instead of pumping out as many issues as we can, put out fewer and make each one a real event. Don't cut the value of your print and paper, invest in it. Make nicer magazines that look better, that feel better, that people want to have in their houses, and fill them with more content to deliver more value. What's the trade-off? Our pricing, certainly in Europe and the US, is terrible. We're terrified of raising prices because we have the ego of big circulation numbers. Don't have big circulation, have profitable circulation. Profitable circulation is 15 euros for a magazine, not 5 euros. That's the direction of travel. And focus on subscriptions. Get rid of the newsstand, which is very wasteful. Focus on a direct connection with the subscribers, and that fuels your first-party data engine, which helps the rest of your business. Digital subscriptions, really, that's the paid content aspect of digital, really important part of what we do. You can have a look at the global position again through a report that we produce, this snapshot that comes out every quarter, which summarizes the key numbers. At the top of the pile, of course, is the New York Times, which now has 10 million subscribers, digital subscribers. But they are an outlier. They're so far ahead of everybody else. But even they are something like they're 22 times smaller than the biggest video streaming business. So in the paid subscription world, they're tiny, and yet they're the biggest player in our space by a factor of 5. For news media brands, digital subscriptions is the only game in town that you have to have this strategy. For magazine media brands, it's not yet clear whether that's working. There aren't enough examples of success. What we do know is that for news media, it works in every country in the world. This report gathers pages and pages of data, and we find examples in every country under the sun of success. And those examples are growing at between, on average, 2.5% to 5% per quarter, not per year, per quarter. Ask yourself a question, is there another area of business that grows that quickly? Cautionary tale on pricing. We had a guy from Spotify who said, why the hell do we complicate pricing so much? It's $9.99 for a reason, so don't be complicated with price. The other big aspect of digital is e-commerce, having the content and commerce relationship. This is how St. Joseph's in Canada think about it. It's a really good way to think about the model. You are creating interest and awareness around the products that you're covering with your content. You're using SEO and search techniques to enable people to find them. You then have consumers using you as the basis of research, and what you want to do is move them into conversion so that they buy from you or from your affiliates, and so that they recommend the experience. Why does Amazon work so well? Because it's one click to buy something. We have to get to a one-click position, and if we can ally that with the thing that Amazon doesn't have, which is trusted content, we're in a great place. I know I'm running out of time. Advertising. A tale of two graphs. Digital advertising, the biggest component of the market, of course, dominated by a small number of companies. Google, Meta, Amazon, TikTok, 60% of the market. If you include Microsoft and Twitter, that goes to 70% plus of the market. So if you want to play in the digital ad space that I mentioned before, you're playing in the tiny space at the top. And by the way, if you're not one of these 16 companies, then you're not even playing in that space. Because these 16 companies, which are primarily magazine or ex-magazine companies, dominate search traffic on the internet. Collectively, they generate 3.7 billion clicks per month for all of these different verticals that they're in, and they use that to sell ads. And if you're not in this group, you're going to struggle. Like the fave my company that I love kicking every time I stand up on stage, the useless idiots at BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed, when it was a private company, $10 a share. Jonah Peretti would stand up on a stage like this. If you could get him, he wouldn't turn up because he's an arrogant dick. But he would turn up at these things and go, look, I'm the future of media, and you guys, you don't know what you're doing. Okay, let's see, put your money where your mouth is. They went public. They're $1 a share. They're worth less than their turnover. What's that share price spike? When he said, we're going to generate all the content through AI. The market went, oh, that's interesting. That's actually not that interesting. You're still $1 a share, mate. So that's what happens if you rely on pilot high, sell it cheap, create crappy content and sell ads around it. It's not worth anything. And the markets finally realized that. They realized it with BuzzFeed. They've realized it with Vice. It's not a model. Lots of regulatory stuff going on. I won't spend time on that because I've run out of time. Just to say that there is going to be more movement on privacy. I know you guys here are thinking about privacy as well. There is going to be moves to break up Google's monopoly of the ad market. There is going to be moves on Meta's disinformation problem. And there's going to be a lot more M&A and consolidation. Everything is for sale. If you want to buy a magazine or a news media company, it's for sale. All of them. So M&A thinking is in the heart of every business. Very quickly at the end, Web 3.0 and the future, what might happen in the future for our industry. There's a whole bunch of nonsense that's talked about all these things. The metaverse, please. Cryptocurrency, it's a Ponzi. NFTs, an even bigger Ponzi. Don't waste your time with any of this nonsense. It's nonsense, honestly. What is interesting, sorry, just to go back, is actually the idea that, related to smart contracting actually, that blockchain might enable us to have a better path of understanding where content originated and who owns it. That could be an interesting use for this technology. I don't know about you, if I go on LinkedIn and somebody has crypto or NFT in their description and they try to link with me, no thank you, not interested. So, to sum up, this is not new. We've been doing digital media for 25 years now. It's not a new business. We are at the end of the beginning of digital media. We have to start getting this right. But the great news is that for us, as news and magazine and lifestyle publishers, we have this wealth of opportunity open to us. There's never been a more exciting time to work in our industry than now. We just have to take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. I hope that I've shown you what some of those are. If you do get the chance to come to Congress this year, we'd love to see you there, June the 6th to the 8th in Cascais. Please do come and talk to me afterwards if you want to know more. We are here also to serve you, to serve the industry. Ideally, if you're members, even if you're not members, please don't be shy, come and see us. Go to FIPP.com, sign up to our newsletter. I am here for your questions anytime. James@FIPP.com, very easy to remember. Please email me, I'd love to hear from you. You'll get a copy of these slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.